Smallpox, a painful and ugly disease, a lethal disease that has ravaged the old world, the great dynasty of China, and a domino in the fall of the great Roman Empire. Not even these great nations were safe from its effects, and like a monsoon it rages on and off. We will focus on the tales of these great empires, how it spread throughout China and ravaged Rome. Smallpox was brought to China in the first millennium, believed to have originated in northeastern Africa as early as 10,000 BC. Through global effort, it was the first disease as a humanity we banded together to eradicate May 8th of 1980. Believed to have been brought from the west to China. Once there, it would not leave until China's own personal eradication of the disease. When smallpox entered China, the people had no real history of immunity. And so now I ask you, does China have a lot of people? Has China always had a lot of people? Yes. By the year 221 BC, the country's population rested at a stable 50 million people, only beginning to surpass that towards the beginning of the first century. Around that same time, smallpox entered China and began its culling. With their high populations in the year 340, Ko Hung described them as red boils. They spread over the body in a short time, containing some white matter. The pustules all arise together and later dry up around the same time. If the severe cases are not treated immediately, many will die. So I state that many did die, and the scales of life and death found their balance. Although smallpox killed more, much more, than balance. We now move on to our next chapter, Rome and the Antonine Plague. Our story begins with war. We start in Mesopotamia, where Rome waged war with the Parthian. Physicians around the east, such as Vagbada in the 7th century, described it as dangerous. In the history of smallpox around the world, it is suggested smallpox may have changed characteristics a little before the birth of the physician Al-Razi. We now move on to our next part, Rome and the Antonine Plague. Our story begins with war. We start in Mesopotamia, where Rome waged war with the Parthian Empire. Those who survived the war returned home. They still were not done with suffering. The soldiers who returned home to their loved and most intimate ones had become carriers of smallpox, starting the Antonine Plague that ravaged Rome for 15 years, crippling the great Roman Empire greatly. Now let me stress the danger of smallpox. With a 30% mortality rate, it spread merely by contact, if not rarely breathing the same air as them. But in the midst of the chaos, Christianity had a chance to grow its roots and dominate the Roman Empire. When it comes to Rome, we cannot separate religion from the empire, as it's a very fundamental thing in the building. Now, why is this important? The Christians had separate values from Rome. They treated both ill men and women equally. This led to an equal male and female ratio. This is a major factor in why Christianity was able to surplus the Roman populace and dominate the empire. If we look at Rome, the ratios were uneven. There are more men than women in the empire because Rome favored male children first. The side with higher birth rates over time would outlast the other. Eventually, Christianity became the prominent religion of Rome. Though the tragedy of smallpox and the Antonine Plague, Rome was not completely helpless, and it had a way to predict the outbreaks of smallpox. Created by Zellner, he dubbed the concept the coefficient of transmissions. Now, the coefficient of transmissions follows this equation. The probability of smallpox to spread from an infected individual to another individual. This is the first variable. We add to our second variable the infection rate, or the number of people the infected person has made contact with. Zellner, after this, would use some more advanced calculations to predict how fast smallpox would spread throughout Rome. This formula is the basis. Eventually, Zellner evolved his theory, adding another layer of complexity: zones. A zone represents the distant A zone represents the density of different areas on a scale of 1 to 4 in Rome. 1 represents the most dense area, such as the capital of Rome. Though deadly, smallpox was not always in immediate danger and would have its breaks. Stated by Philbrick, a new state of equilibrium is not reached for 10 to 15 years, and the epidemic proceeds in a complex or even somewhat chaotic manner. The initial outbreak is not the most deadly, but only the first in a series of relatively small outbreaks of varying sizes. So, how would these people deal with smallpox? I would cut cleanly. They didn't really have any proper method of dealing with it. Those who survived smallpox lived and gained immunity. Those who didn't died, adding to the pile of corpses. So, how would these people deal with smallpox? I would cut it cleanly. They didn't really have any proper method of dealing with it. Those who survived smallpox lived and gained immunity, and those who didn't died, adding to the pile of corpses. It was only till the 15th century that the practice of inoculation to give people mild smallpox in order to build immunity started existing. They had to rely on herbal medicines and cold treatment before this. Smallpox is much more deep rooted than just the pustules on the outside. So I have a question for you. If smallpox came back in the 40 years it hasn't existed, what immunity would you have? With how connected we are to each other, airplanes, boats, buses, we make so much close contact with each other every day. Before governments could properly distribute a vaccine, how many people would die? From the spread, it could lead to the collapse of entire countries. Those prepared could easily take advantage and exploit this. Neighboring countries, warring countries, our modern world would be ravaged until we cleansed it once again. As humans, we cannot prepare for everything. After all,